It's Bigfoot Collectors Club with Bryce, Michael, and Ivy. I know a story of high strangeness or two. Let's do this.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Bigfoot Collectors Club, the show where we talk to amazing guests about their personal paranormal history and share stories of high strangeness. I'm your host, Michael McMillan. With me always is your other host,
Bryce Johnson.
And our super producer,
Riley Bray.
How's it going, boys?
Good. How are you?
Good. Feeling
Good.
spunky.
I'm glad things are good and funky because I don't care. I'm too excited about this week's episode. We need to get right into it. All right.
Yeah,
so no
jump
small
in.
talk.
Yeah.
All right. I do want to remind everybody that our live stream show, our Clubhouse live stream, is this weekend, Saturday, March 11th at 9 p.m. Eastern. You can get your tickets at popsylounge.com. You can get a VIP pass in addition to that to hang out with Bryce or Riley or me after the show. Guys, Marcy Jarro will be there. There might be some fun more surprises. A new merch reveal with a special discount code that's only going to happen during the show. So, you don't want to miss it.
Some mystery merch.
Mystery merch, baby. All righty.
Yeah.
Well, let's bring in this week's guests. We have two wonderful guests this week. This is an expert episode. We're talking to people who know more about the subject than we do because our guests tonight are no strangers to the afterlife. Please welcome to the podcast from the smash hit television shows Ghost Hunters and Kindred Spirits and host of the spooky podcast Haunted Road, Amy Bruni. And her collaborator from her book, Life with the Afterlife, author, journalist, and friend of the show, Julie Tremaine. Welcome, ladies. Welcome.
Yeah,
right.
Thanks for having us. It's exciting.
Yeah,
so
thanks for
excited.
being here.
We got some,
We're excited.
we got some paranormal celebrities in the house tonight.
Well,
This
we
is
have
great.
a paranormal celebrity and a
V-list.
friend of a paranormal celebrity.
Okay, fair enough. Listen, Julie, I didn't want you to feel unincluded, okay? You're
I
part of the
appreciate
team. That's what it's like you're one of the Ghostbusters. Come on, everyone here is a Ghostbuster. We're all on the same team.
Yeah.
Yeah, you wrote about us. We love you. So
Yeah.
you're
True,
good.
friend of the show.
You're good.
Amy, do you like or dislike the term Ghostbuster?
You know, I don't mind it. I am fully aware of our roots. So, and what gets people interested. And so, people always talk about like ghost hunter, ghostbuster, paranormal investigator, researcher. I'm good with all of it.
It's all
We
good.
recently
Nice.
coined the term Ghost Quester over on our
Ooh.
Patreon because we felt like we're questing to find ghosts, talk to ghosts, not necessarily bust them or hunt them. So maybe
Well,
you
we
can
wanted
use
it to
Ghost
feel like an
Quester.
80s arcade game, too. So.
Yeah.
I was just going to say that sounds very like Zelda. Like we're on a
Yeah.
quest.
Mission accomplished.
Yeah.
Yeah, done.
I want to talk both about the book and your podcast, Haunted Road, but I do want to say the one thing that really jumped out real quick when I was reading the book was how you talked about, I think it was while you were filming Ghost Hunters, that you felt bad that you guys, because of production, didn't have time to like help the ghosts and the spirits that you guys were coming in touch with. And I was like, oh yeah, I never thought about that. That was a really poignant point, I thought, to kick off the book.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was not even just a production limitations. It was just that was not the mission of the show. The show was definitely like, this place is haunted. Goodbye. It was just
Yeah,
there
you got
was
ghosts
never.
here.
Yeah, or you don't. And so there was never any like solid resolution. And at first that was great. Like I was in it just to kind of confirm or have experiences, but then later on, after a few years of being on that show, I just kind of felt like, we were leaving things kind of unsolved and that there was more that we could do. And that was no one's fault. It was just not what the show did at that time.
Yeah, Bryce, have you ever thought about what you guys are going to do if you find Bigfoot on Expedition Bigfoot? Or is it just going to be a handshake and you say goodbye? Like, you're not going to help the guy? You're not going to do anything? Like, what are you going to do?
No, haven't thought too much about that. I mean, I've thought about it a little bit. I mean, like, let's get to finding him first, and then we'll deal with what we're gonna do once we do later.
Fair enough.
It's funny reading in some. We were at the Historical Society down in Northern California, and I remember this one article about people were so interested in making these Bigfoot traps back in the day, like and how they were going to like haul them out of the forest, and they were so like ingenious, and I was just like, oh my God, let's just focus on trying to get some good evidence first before we make these like ornate traps on how we're going to get them and haul them out of the forest. But
I mean, the next step, of course, is to put them on Broadway. You know what I mean? You get them, and then you put them in show business.
Yeah, exactly.
That's the whole point. So, Julie, how did you and Amy team up for Life with the Afterlife, and how did you two find each other?
So we were both living in Rhode Island at the time, and we had a mutual friend. And I said to our mutual friend, I know that a ghost hunter lives here, and I know that you're friends with her, and I really want to be friends with her. Can you invite her to my house? And it happened. They came over for a dinner party. I served Amy fondue, and then we have been friends ever since.
That's love this story. What a perfect friendship fondue. It's great. It works every time.
Yeah, spooky cheese. Yeah.
And I've never had fondue as good as that night. And I literally have tried many times. So we need a repeat, please.
A friendship was formed.
Yeah, you'll have to pretend you don't know each other yet. That was the extra spice that made it so wonderful. So
that's it. Even the melting pot didn't compare.
Yeah. We ask all of our guests this. Neither of you are different. What is your personal paranormal history? Julie, how did you get interested in the subject? And Amy, I know you have a lot of backstory with a haunted house that you grew up in. So maybe we'll start there. But let us know, how did you get into this world?
Julie first, or my man would be long. So
go for it, Amy.
Yours is much better.
Okay. Well, no, I don't think that's true. But so mine is just kind of long in the sense that I grew up in a haunted house, which I think a lot of people who are into the paranormal kind of had the same experience. And then as I got older, my interest in ghosts and the paranormal just kind of continued, especially in the 80s. I was really into like Hans Holzer books, and I loved In Search of or Leonard Nimoy, and it was just kind of an odd hobby, I guess. But now that I look at my 10-year-old kind of following in my footsteps, I guess it's just not so odd. But that being said, I continued and had like a very normal life. I was a project manager at a health insurance company, but like on the weekends, I was part of a paranormal team, and I would fly all over the country investigating the paranormal. I started a paranormal podcast. We did the TAPS Family Radio with the TAPS team, which was Ghost Hunters.
Cool.
And so I met Jay and Grant. It was like a long time ago, and so I met Jay and Grant through those channels, and they kept asking me to be on Ghost Hunters, and I kept politely declining because I had the project manager job with benefits and great salary, and it seemed really irresponsible to leave all that to be on a paranormal reality television show. But eventually I said yes. They came out to California, and they did a couple cases, and they had me guest on them, and I was hooked, and I literally never went home. Like, I literally just parked my car in my grandma's driveway, and I was like, goodbye. And I was on the road with them for like 7 years after that. Sometimes 300 days a year we were off filming. That was back in the day when we would shoot 26 episodes in a season.
Wow.
And we would do 2 seasons a year. So it was a lot. Yeah, it was wild.
I'm trying to do the math, and I'm like, wait, is that like an episode a week? That's crazy.
It is. So what it was a case a week, basically, but then there were occasional cases that would take up because I don't know if you remember the original Ghost Hunters, but there was always an A case and a B case. And then occasionally there was a case that took up an entire hour. And so when we got those, that equaled a week off, basically. Like if there was a case that they could make into an entire episode, then we got some time off. And so that was how that worked.
That didn't give you a lot of time to do sort of what you do is sort of research the history and do some research. I mean, that doesn't give you a lot of time to do that.
It didn't. I mean, back then I wasn't doing that was something that I've just always gravitated toward. But at that time I was not doing that for the show. That was not my role then. At that time the show just handed the researcher whatever they had, and they just kind of recited it on camera, whoever was researching at that time. And so,
gotcha.
But once I got into it, like I was really aware of, because once I took on the role of researcher, I didn't want to recite anything that wasn't true. And so they would give me the research, and I would
we don't
always
have that problem here.
Yeah. I mean, we have that problem, but we don't have that problem with it sometimes.
It just happens. It's
we
fine.
deal
But
with it by
would,
later listening back to the episode and going, "Oops,
and that's
I got
fair.
that
And
wrong."
you can own up to it. That's fair. Like I'm very, I'll own up to my mistakes any day. But so I would always double check whatever they handed me, which meant that I would start researching the case, or I would find new things. And so that was kind of, but there wasn't a lot of time for that then. But in later seasons, there got to be more time just because we were doing less episodes. But that was a crazy time in TV. There was no streaming. There were DVRs. Like everybody just watched live. So way back in the day, in the olden days.
Wow.
It's incredible. You really sort of helped lay the groundwork for really what's blossoming, I think, right now in so many ways. Paranormal television and podcasts. And I think people have always been interested in this stuff, but now they finally have this sort of medium and these channels to go to. And it's such a great thing. So we're grateful and thankful.
Well, I don't take any credit for that, but
we're
but I
giving you
do
all the
think
credit.
that. Well, thank you. But what I love about right now is that you don't need on Ghost Hunters back then, our audience on Wednesday nights at 9 was 3 to 4 million people watching, and you don't really need that now, because now you're in a place where you can do podcasts, or you can do a YouTube channel, or you can have a show on Discovery Plus, and you don't need that major audience live anymore to kind of get your project out there, which it's a very different environment, and it's a really great environment for people who are creative or truly interested in what we do.
Certainly allows for more nuance too. I think you can inject, I would imagine, even with Kindred Spirits, which is a big show, I feel like that's a platform where you can inject a little bit more of your take and your personality into something now. You know what I mean? The shows have become a little bit more niche and nuanced in that way, I feel like.
Yeah, well, I knew after Ghost Hunters, and Adam knew too, like we didn't want to do another show if we didn't have creative control. And so that's why, we're executive producers on Kindred. We see every final cut before it's aired. And it sounds so cheesy, but I just never wanted to be on a show where I couldn't look my child in the eye one day and be like, you know what, mommy was always on the level. Mommy did everything on TV, and I never had to give up anything. I always legitimate.
Again, I don't have that problem.
I kept my integrity. I kept my integrity the whole time. The only way you can do that is if you have complete control. So that was a big mission for us.
So cool. That's great. Julie, how did you get into the paranormal? Clearly you were excited that a ghost hunter lived in your town and a paranormal investigator. So where did this fascination begin with you?
Well, it all starts with Stephen King, right? I think that there's a direct correlation to if you start reading Stephen King books when you are way, way, way too young to reasonably reading them, that just paves the path for you. So
I was too scared.
Oh my God. No way. I was reading everything. I was like, where can I get to the books that my family won't let me read in the other room? Everything Stephen King, everything Anne Rice, anything I could get my hands on that was spooky was great. So then that led to me just being a kid who was looking for secret passages in my house and always believing that there was something else to find out. So I started a career in journalism. I worked at a magazine, and when Amy and I became friends, that's when I really started writing about paranormal stuff. I went to a couple months after we met, I went to an event at the Mount Washington Hotel in New Hampshire that Amy, she runs a paranormal travel company called Strange Escapes. And they have like these small conventions where you go ghost hunting and like a couple hundred people get together. They have experts like Greg and Danny Newkirk and John Tenney come and like give lectures and lead ghost hunts. Yep. It's so cool. And I went because I was like, I just really want to see what this is like. And I was more interested in not in finding ghosts, but in meeting and observing the people who were very interested in the paranormal and in finding them. And I just started finding all these amazing stories. Like, I don't think anybody, at least not before 5 years ago, was writing about the paranormal in like a serious journalistic way. I think it was either like, oh, you're crazy and you write these weird books, or it was, you are a rational person who believes that there's nothing. But then what I've been finding, like, I've been writing a lot of these stories, interviewing a lot of really, I believe, credible experts. And I find that when I'm talking about them with like quote unquote normal people, every time that somebody in that conversation is like, actually, I did see something once, and they like really want to talk about the paranormal as soon as you open up the door for it.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, too.
We've been doing that for the past 5+ years, and it does feel like this. It does feel like you're granting people permission. I feel, Amy, you've got to relate to this too. Like, it's okay setting that safe place to talk about this stuff. I think really does allow people to shake off that stigma. I'm interested, Julie, in what you learned observing the people who are into this. Like, what conclusions have you come to about us? Like, and us, I mean the collective group, not the. Yeah.
I think that there's a real through line of curiosity and open-mindedness. And, you know, let's see if exactly what's being presented to us is true, or let's try to find out if there's something more we can learn. And I think that what has really struck me, and I think I don't think that everyone who investigates the paranormal is like this, but at least the people that Amy keeps company with and the people that go to her events have a really, really strong sense of skepticism and say, you know, we don't want to look at one weird noise and say that's definitely a ghost. We want to hear that one weird noise and say, actually, that could be one of 50 other things. Let's eliminate all of those. And if we can eliminate all of them, maybe there's something cool, and let's continue down this path.
It's so wild. I mean, because those are like key ingredients of what makes a great scientist, you know, curiosity, open-mindedness, good, healthy skepticism. Yet somehow they seem to have cordoned off their interest in things that are outside the materialist world. And I guess I find that a little bit funny, to say the least. But I would agree. There's something great about not only recognizing that there's mystery out there in the world, but trying to get at it and find answers. You know, one thing, Amy, to jump into your book again here, probably a little early and quick, but one thing I love that you wrote right off the top is, I know a lot less about the afterlife than I did when I began investigating and researching unexplained phenomena. And, you know, I too, like, I thought doing this podcast 5 years, I would have like maybe an answer or two. And I have a couple pet theories, but sometimes it's so true. I just end up with more questions than I ever started with. Can you talk a little bit about that statement?
I think it's kind of one of the harder lessons to learn as an investigator. Like, I feel like I went into this just kind of knowing, like, what happens when we die? What is a ghost? You know? And then the more that I did this, I was like, I actually really have no idea. Like, I know weird stuff happens, and that's about as far as it's gone. But what I love and I'm fascinated by is just all the crazy correlations that I see, or the very human element to activity that I see. Like, and I'm like, I don't know as much as I thought I did when I started, but I'm more fascinated by it than when I started, if that's possible. And it's, you know, it's hard because people watch the show and they have like the same viewpoint as I did when I started. And they're so positive, like, you met this ghost. You need to cross this ghost over. You need to send them to the light. And I'm like, why are we so sure? Why do we know there's a light? Why do we know ghosts need to be crossed over? why, and there's just a lot more whys now than there were before. And I feel like in order to give what I'm doing a fair shake, but also whatever or whoever is behind the activity we're experiencing a fair shake, like I need to know for sure what is happening there or something close to it before I assume I have solved the problem. You know what I mean? And so it's gotten a lot more complicated as I've gone along, but I enjoy it that much more, if that makes any sense.
It does.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. For those who may not be familiar with your work, Amy, who are listening, and I'm sure most of our listeners are, we've had ghost hunters and mediums and intuitives on the show before. Do you bring any of that with you? Do you feel like you have an intuitive sense at all when you're doing this stuff, or are you approaching paranormal investigation with just boots on the ground pragmatism, like I'm going to figure this out and use tools at my hand and my brain? And how are you coming to some of these conclusions about, wait a minute, what's going on here?
I tell people all the time, like, don't ignore your gut. Like, when you meet someone, a living person in front of you, or you walk into a room at like a dinner party or something, and there's a conversation going on and you interrupt it, like, you have that feeling, that kind of human, like, oh, I know this is a good situation, or I just walked into something tense, or like, and those feelings, I think you feel when it comes to spirits and ghosts. I think they still exhibit those kinds of, they put off those kinds of feelings. And so I think it's important to listen to that. I don't want to assume that I'm psychic or anything, but I do think I'm pretty empathic with the living and the dead. Like, I think I can read people pretty well. And so I take that into the investigation for sure. But I like to have kind of all factors. I love having a culmination of experience, research, psychic intuition and feelings, evidence, whatever you consider that to be. I like it when all of that comes together to either formulate a personality of someone who I might be communicating with, or something that correlates with like actual historical fact. Like, it's a lot more work than I ever thought it would be, but it's super rewarding. But I think it's, if you look at spirit activity as though someone is standing right in front of you and you're trying to figure out their problem and how they got there and what's going on, and you apply those same kind of steps, it's remarkably similar. And so you just kind of have to take away that element of like, this is an undead, or not undead, that's a zombie. Could be
undead, you never know. There's a wide spectrum out there.
How about
take away that element of unseen, person, and it's the same.
I was going to ask, how about you, Julie? Have you ever found that sort of your interest and maybe in the paranormal, has it developed any sort of sixth sense for you? Has it? Has anything?
Have you encountered anything, Julie?
Yeah. I just like Amy said, like, you get a read on things. Like, you can always tell when someone's looking at you, even if you're not looking at that person, right? And I think that same feeling applies when you walk into a space that is creepy and maybe haunted. Like, you get a sense immediately, maybe there's something here, or there's probably nothing here. In the pursuit of journalism and also of doing crazy stupid things, I have gone to a lot of haunted places with Amy, and I have definitely experienced things before. There was one time when I was like, we were at the Conjuring house, and I was like, oh, I really want to go see what's in the basement. Everyone's talking about the basement, super creepy. And I was like, you have to go down there with me. And we walked over together, and then she was like, bye, see ya, and just set me down there by myself. I was like,
no,
bad friend. But yeah, no, actually at the Mount Washington, not that first time, but at the Mount Washington, I stayed in the Princess Room, which is the notoriously haunted room. I know Amy stayed there a bunch of times. I stayed there a couple of times. I definitely, I had a time when furniture was moving on its own.
Whoa.
I had super weird interference on my phone, and I turned on my recorder, which is, I normally just use to record interviews. Like, I was not investigating ghosts at all, but I was like, oh, if there's something weird in here, let me just turn on my recorder. And I was talking on the phone, and I said, I'm not really scared, but I really feel like I just need to go to sleep. And I repeated what I had said when I walked into the room. I walked into the room alone, and I was like, I know that there's something in here. And I just said to the room, like, this is incredible. This is a really unique experience, and I appreciate it so much, but I just really need to go to sleep. But then, the room is like supercharged, and I get in bed and I'm freaked out. So then I'm like, all right, I'm just gonna like make a phone call and try to like calm down a little. I turn on my recorder from the weird interference and I play it back the next day. And when I say, I just said, I just need to get some sleep, you can hear a woman saying, go to sleep in the recording.
Wow.
Whoa.
The worst part is she was calling me in the middle of the night. She's like, I don't know what to do. And I was like, I'm exhausted. Good night.
Yeah.
Enjoy
bye.
the princess room. You asked for this.
I mean, God,
Actually,
there
you
is that
offered
element
it.
of
I didn't ask
braveness.
for it.
You guys are very courageous.
I did offer it to you, but you were like, yes, that sounds lovely.
Yeah, that's true. And I did the
Why
same
didn't
thing
you
on
take the ride?
the haunted room on the Queen Mary. I did the same thing, but
Yes.
there was no ghost in there. At least I didn't feel like there was a ghost in there when I was by myself, but all night long, people kept banging on the door of the haunted room. So it was like every half an hour, they would just like bang, bang, bang on the door, and I would just jump out of my skin. And eventually, the third time it happened, somebody banged on the door and was like, are there any ghosts in there? Knock once for yes or twice for no. And I just screamed back, how are you going to knock twice if there's no ghost here? And they screamed and ran away. And then no one bothered me again for the rest of the night. But it was like 4 a.m. at that point.
I had this image when you were telling that story about the princess room that there were just like all these ghosts are like, all right, we got a guest tonight. Let's put on a show. We're going to move some furniture. We're going to flash some lights around. And how disappointed they are when you're like, I just want to go to bed. And they're like, oh.
Yeah,
That was the
right.
tone on the recording. I swear that the woman was like, okay, well, you said you needed to sleep, so go to sleep. Like, I'm here. You better talk to
do
me
it.
if you're going to talk to someone.
She's pretty sassy. It is weird. Like the princess room at the Mount Washington, like literally it's her bed still.
Mhm.
And it's
Whoa.
a bed she traveled with everywhere. And so it's this really elaborate carved bed that the princess had. And like, that's where you sleep. And so among other, like, it's no wonder that it is haunted.
Gosh.
Giving me chills already. Well, let's take a quick break. When we come back, let's get into some of these specifics. I know Bryce has a lot of questions too. He's got some good notes I saw you taking about this book, Life with the Afterlife. So we'll be right back. All right, we're back talking to Amy and Julie. Let's talk about this book and what the 13 truths are about ghosts that, at least some of them, one or two of them maybe. We don't want to give away the whole book. But we're talking about Life with the Afterlife.
Yeah. So, Amy, one thing that caught my attention in reading this great book, and of course you are on the Bigfoot Collectors Club. Did I read that you thought you might have seen a Yeti when you were a kid? Is this right?
Okay, I need to ask you about this experience because
Okay.
I'll tell you the whole story. I don't know how much time we have, and it's in the book too.
Oh, we got time for a Yeti story.
We got time
for
for a
sure.
Yeti. Yeah.
Okay. I had the wildest experience of I was like 12, I want to say, but like there were witnesses. My brother saw it too. You can tell me what I saw, I hope. So, I lived in Northern California, Petaluma, California. And there was one night we used to play in this field across the street from our house. We were running in the field. It was kind of like dusk. It was just getting dark. We had this very clear path that we followed every time. We went down this path, came up the hill, and across the way from us, like walking across a hill across the way, was this very large white figure. And I'm not kidding. This thing looked to be, like in my brain, I was like, that thing's 12 feet tall. I don't know. I'm going to guess it was more like 8 or 9, but it was big. It was a white figure. It was not human. It was actually slightly transparent, I would say, but I'm not sure. But at that point, my brother and I and some of the neighbor kids, we like all saw this thing. We stopped in our tracks. No one said a word. No one screamed. everyone just instantly turned around and ran home. Like it was like running for your life, ran all the way home, went our separate ways at the end of the trail. My brother and I ran back to our house. We went inside and like slammed the door. My mom was like, "What is wrong with you guys?" We're like, "Nothing." And my brother was like, "Did you see that?" I'm like, "I saw that." And then we never spoke of it again.
Wow.
But then years later, I was like 16 and we used to hang out at this like kind of punk rock theater downtown called the Phoenix Theater. And I was there with some of my friends like playing pool or whatever. And this guy came up and he's like freaked out. And he says, I was just in the forest by the cemetery, which was the same forest I saw this thing in. And he's like, he's like, "You guys, I'm not kidding. I was there with some friends. We saw this like really tall, like white figure." By the way, I'd never told anyone this story because I was like, everyone's going to think I'm bonkers. He's like, "I just saw this like really tall white figure. We all saw it. We all ran." And I was like, I literally just started like sweating. I was like, "Oh my God, I hadn't even thought of this thing in years." And so all of my friends, of course, were like, "Let's go." And I was like, "I don't really want to go." But I went. And so we went all the way back. We got as far as the cemetery, and this kid like peaced out. He was like, "I can't do it." He's like, "I'm scared. I cannot do it. I don't want to see this thing again. It was awful." And he went home. So we hopped the fence into the cemetery, went into the woods. We did not see this thing again, but we sat in the woods and we just heard this like crunching of like footsteps all around us. And it was like mortifying. And so I don't know what I saw.
Man.
This was not necessarily Bigfoot country. It's the woods and like, but it was still like to this day, it's the one thing where I'm like, I don't know. Like I have no answer for that. I saw it. I was not the only one who saw it. Yeah. So I don't know.
I've been Googling, just so you guys know, Petaluma and Bigfoot stuff and seeing what comes up. But Bryce, what do you think?
I mean, look, you get reports from all over California, especially Northern California, and there are reports of like different colored creatures that people see. It's so funny. Seeing a white or an albino Bigfoot is very rare, and it almost holds some symbological significance for some. I think that's just absolutely wild. I love this idea that when you get into that 12-foot range, you can pretty much, in my mind, you're talking Bigfoot at this point. But that translucent effect, I find that so fascinating. And I think that holds an important clue as to possibly, maybe what Bigfoot is. This show was going to be called before it was Bigfoot Collectors Club. What was it, Michael? Bigfoot is a ghost?
Yeah, Bigfoot is a ghost.
That's a chapter in the...
Yeah. So,
there is a Sonoma.
Wild.
There's a Sonoma Sasquatch, which I know Petaluma is in Sonoma County. Mm-hmm. So there are definitely sightings, and I'm just a very quick light Googs brings up sightings. Like I have one from 1991. It doesn't give the color, but a 7.5 foot tall creature crossing the highway, and the multiple eyewitnesses in the car saying that the legs and the crotch of the animal were taller than the oncoming car, the headlights of the oncoming car. So people have definitely seen these creatures up there, but that white or that translucent detail is so fascinating to me, because that's when you're like, okay, well, that's very specific, and we're talking about two different people, two different eyewitnesses,
years apart.
Mm-hmm. There's something there for sure.
And Petaluma's kind of known for its weirdness. Like I've learned. I didn't know that then, and honestly I've never even Googled like Sasquatch Sonoma County, so that's really interesting. But yeah, to this day that's one of those things where I have zero explanation, but I saw it and I wasn't the only one. So
I think this just means we need to go to wine country and investigate.
I think so too. Absolutely.
That's what I'm hearing.
Yes, that sounds good to me.
Gladly.
One thing else too, I think, and I love this. you bring up a lot of community players in your work, like the Newkirks and John Tenney, people who I think we admire very much. And I think it was the Newkirks who was the first, Greg Newkirk, who was the first person I heard say Bigfoot could be a ghost. So
yeah, that article for the website years ago.
They're really great thinkers in this topic. And can you talk to a little bit about just kind of this new community of the paranormal investigators, and there seems to be this new guard, and it's very inclusive, and it's very thoughtful, and I just I love that. Can you talk a little bit about your relationship with the Newkirks and Tenney and people like that?
Well, I really think when I started there, I mean, I don't love the term gatekeeping, but it's kind of applicable here. Like, I felt like there was a lot of like people just constantly wanting credit for ideas, or I did this first, or I discovered this. And like, I started gravitating toward people who just really wanted to work together and who really wanted to kind of, just formulate ideas and research and talk about it and come up with new ways of doing things and share those ideas and share them with people they don't know and make them available. And then I find that, we constantly still are like, I learned this from so-and-so, or constantly giving credit where credit is due, but it's not, that was really important to me. And that's why it was important for us to include all of them in the book, was because, a lot of my ideas I didn't just come up with those. Those came from like late night hotel lobby chats or, phone calls and research with other people. And so I just wanted to make sure that people could see that we viewed the paranormal as a community and like just a partnership, and to not be afraid to discuss ideas, have differing ideas, research differently, use different pieces of equipment. Like, none of that is wrong, because like I said before, like, I don't know the answers, but I'll try anything at this point. And so I just really wanted to promote that idea of like, it's not about who did what first, or who came up with what, or who has the biggest TV show or the biggest following. Like, just listen to those ideas and thoughts that really resonate with you and go with them.
And I think some of that sentiment is echoed in, the title of the chapter. There's no right way to find spirits. There's you can do this the way you can approach this work the way that you want to. In terms of gatekeeping, there's not a strict rule you have to follow. Don't listen to somebody who's like, this is the only way to do it. Julie, I'm really interested in what you learned collaborating, like what new ideas or did any big light bulbs go off while writing the book with Amy?
Well, to give you an idea of how much I knew about the paranormal, when I started, the first time I ever interviewed Amy, I thought I was like so cool, and I was asking her all these questions, and I was like, so do you ever use a spectrometer? And she just looked at me, just like stone face, just blinked and was like, what's that? And I was like, isn't that ghost hunting thing that everyone uses? And she's like, no. And that was it. And I was just like, oh my God, I died. I actually wrote that part into the book. I like memorialized that scene forever. So that was where I was starting from, because I had no idea what I was talking about. And it was just years of watching these people in action, like seeing this idea exchange, and like just this real like curiosity. Like, the more I learned, the more I was like, I really, really want to learn more about this. So it was just, that was the best part, was not just talking to Amy about all these ideas, because like I feel like I knew a lot of what she wanted to say in the book before we started, because I just knew so much about her philosophy of the paranormal. But talking to so many other experts was so cool, because every time I would learn one more thing, I'd be like, oh, that's right, that's exactly what Tenney just said yesterday. And they're all like, yeah, we know each other. Like, we know what the other person thinks. But I was so excited to learn all of it. I don't know what the one thing is, other than that you don't use a spectrometer to hunt ghosts. I think that was my one big takeaway.
Did you? Where are you with all this stuff? Amy was talking about how now having less of an explanation from this stuff than when she started. Do you kind of have the same feeling like, I don't know what this stuff is? Or do you have a theory of what's going on out there with this phenomena?
No, not at all. I really come from it from a journalist's perspective, where I walk into, yes, I sign up to write stories about weird stuff. I've read about you guys before. Like, I am here for strange and unconventional topics, but I walk into it every time thinking, I'm a neutral observer, and I'm going to see what I can see. If there are things in front of me that I'm experiencing, I have to acknowledge that I'm seeing things, but I'm not going in there saying, God, I really hope I see a ghost tonight. So when I saw that, furniture moving at the Mount Washington, I was like, okay, you're really going to have to reconsider your life view here, because you just saw something move furniture, and no one physical moved it.
How much did this furniture move?
Moved a lot, actually.
How much are we talking? Like chair across the room, or like a bowl nudging?
It's actually happened several times since we've been back to the Mount Washington several times, and it has happened in that room more than once. There's a nightstand next to the princess's bed, and we were earlier in the night, there were investigations in the room. Adam was leading investigations in the room, and Amy, I think you were there too, right?
Yeah, I was probably in and out. I do remember. Yeah. I've seen this happen a number of times.
They're investigating. They're getting some responses. I'm just hanging back and watching and listening. And at one point, I was sort of standing in front of this nightstand, and I was like, my back was sort of to the wall. I could see everyone in the room. There was no one who could have done this. I turned my head, and a drawer was popped out a little bit, and I was like, Okay. I heard a story before. The manager had told me earlier that he had seen that happen before. So I was like, okay, push the drawer back in. A little bit later, it happens again. And I know no one's moved. I'm standing in a place where I see nobody moving. And I'm like, this is super weird.
Right.
So they close up the investigation. People are like, yeah, we're going to go downstairs to the lobby. I was like, cool. I'll come with you. I'm going to use the bathroom. So everybody leaves the room. I close the door, go to the bathroom. I come back out, and a different drawer is extended all the way open. And no one was in the room. The door was locked. I was by myself there, and there was no earthquake. Like there was no external force, but Greg and Dana were still outside, like out in the hallway. So I'm like, guys, come back in here. Some shit has happened, and we need to talk about it. So they come back in, and the two of them were like really trying to debunk it. They're shaking the dresser to see if movement in the dresser will make it open. They're stomping on the floor. They're shaking the bed. Anything that they can think of for some external force to have moved this, and they can't come up with anything at all. So that has happened. That happened that night, and I stayed in that room by myself that night. And I actually slept too. At one point in the middle of the night, I woke up and I was like...
Slept like a baby.
I was like, all right, don't open your eyes. If you open your eyes and you look around this room, you're never going back to sleep. So just lay here with your eyes closed, and that's it. And it actually worked. I actually slept the rest of the day, and it was fine.
Those are called little kid tactics. If I don't see them, they won't be me.
Exactly. It's just like under
everybody
the covers,
knows
like,
the
no,
bed covers is a force field. We know that, and the ghosts know that too.
No
they respect
feet
that.
out hands. Yeah, you got to keep everything under the cover.
That's
friend
real.
of the show.
That's actually
Dave Keith. When we were kids and I'd sleep over, he would sleep with a sheet tucked under his head to the bottom of his feet like a shroud, and he'd have his glasses on, so he was just ready to run out of the room at any moment.
Oh my goodness.
Monsters wouldn't see him. One of the things that I learned, in the book, I mean, among other things, but I had always heard, we've always talked about how, there's like the stone tape theory. There's an idea that maybe when an incident happens, it leaves a residual sort of handprint or time print, where something traumatic might play back. And so some people might say, oh, it's not a ghost. It's just sort of an imprint of something that happened in time. But one thing I hadn't really put together, and it's not a new idea, but you bring up T.C. Lethbridge and this theory of the aggregor, of this idea that the energy can linger, but then the energy itself can take on a personality and sort of mimic what we would conceive of as a ghost. Can you talk more about that? Because I love this idea.
Yeah, I mean, I don't love that idea because it's slightly terrifying.
It is scary, but it's cool.
Right.
But
Yeah.
I do feel like it's something we've been exploring more only because, we're going into places that have been investigated repeatedly. And I always kind of go back to the idea of Felmore Winery in Liberty, Missouri, which was the old Oddfellows complex there. So there's like a hospital, an old folks home, they call it, a nursing home, an orphanage. And it's kind of like my dream location because it's literally like all these abandoned buildings, and then the orphanage is renovated into a winery and inn. And so I can be like, I'm going to drink some wine and then I'm going to go to the morgue. And it's like, but,
by the way, this is 45 minutes from my hometown. So like when you got to let me know when you guys are going back there. I'll fly home for this.
We're going in June. We go every year on Strange Escapes. And so I've become such good friends with the owners, and we go on vacation together, everything. But anyways, I digress. But what was happening there is something strange appeared out of nowhere. Like this was normally just like a kind of conventional haunt that you would see in an old abandoned place like this. But then eventually they got this weird crawly shadow thing that was crawling across the ceiling. It was like whispering in people's ears. It was just a lot darker than what had ever been there, because truthfully, the Oddfellows complex really had nothing but kind of noble, positive intentions ever. And what we figured, or what we surmised, this is our theory, is that they host ghost hunts there almost every weekend. And so you have people who are ready to have an experience. They're going into what used to be the morgue and the nursing home. It's falling apart. They're sitting in the dark. They're tense. They're thinking about every person who ever died there. They're wondering if they're going to have a paranormal experience. They're just putting off the most insane amount of energy and emotion. They're like slightly terrified, but also excited. And like that just kept happening at night after night after night. And we just felt like that energy just kind of kept being left there, and eventually kind of turned into what they were looking for. And it would mimic people. It would like say their names, or it would like mimic their voice, or it would kind of take a form that it knew was like the scariest thing to them. And so that was really our first brush.
That's wild.
With something like that. But then we started seeing it more in places that were investigated heavily, because places are being investigated now more than they ever were, over and over again, especially these more like commercial ones. And there are these like kind of strange, different entities or spirits that are appearing there that I don't think necessarily come from the history, but I think they're remnants of whatever energy people are leaving behind.
We're like adding to them.
That reminds me of the Bell Witch. There were qualities there of the Bell Witch, because they kept saying the more they talked to it and acknowledged it, the more of a personality it formed. And one could argue, well, that's what happens when you begin a discussion with a spirit. But I like this theory that you're helping create it by engaging with it. You're co-creating this energy.
Michael, you remember we talked about on the podcast that Philip the Ghost out of the Toronto
Which is
Research
also in the
Project,
book,
where they literally created their own spirit entity by just adding to its backstory, which I love as an actor. It's just you just need to do more work on the backstory and you'll get there. But I actually want to kind of segue into this. This is perfect, because one thing I'm sort of becoming really fascinated with lately is these connections and parallels between what's the UFO and UAP phenomenon and poltergeist activity. I think it's just in recent years where we're starting to make these connections that, if you're visited by a UFO and you see a being from that, UFO, then maybe later you're going to see a shadow person in your room. And one thing that I see a lot connecting is like orbs, like it's happening at the Skinwalker Ranch, the Chris Bledsoe experiencer case, even the aerial phenomenon, where poltergeist activity, what we would consider sort of ghost activity, seems to sort of accompany the classic UFO encounter. What do you guys make of this?
Even stories of aliens walking through walls,
Yes.
which is a very ghost thing to do.
I have a theory on there. I think it really comes down to the belief system of the person experiencing it. Like, I really think it's like kind of their perceived conception of what is happening. If there's somebody like there was a woman who I think it was our first Kindred Spirits case. She came to us and she said, at night I am in my bed. She's like, I'm wide awake, I'm reading, my lights are on, and she's like, and this ghost appears to me. And that's this big sphere, like a crystal, and it's got all of these lights inside of it. And then its legs are crystals that come out of the bottom of it. And she's like, she describes this to me, and I'm like, that's an alien.
Yeah.
I'm like, that does not sound like any ghost I've ever heard. She lives in the middle of nowhere, and she talks about how this being like visits her all the time, but she was convinced it was like the spirit of her son. And I was like, but that's what she believed. And so it makes you wonder, like, is what people think it is, like, is it completely dependent on what they believe it to be? Because a lot of the experiences people have when it comes to, like, being visited by aliens or UFOs or even some crypto experiences, they kind of cross over quite a bit with what people claim to have happened with paranormal experiences. So I don't know.
Man, crystal sphere legs. I don't know, man.
That's metal.
That's a new one.
Isn't that weird?
Awesome.
Like it was like a sphere with, I could see it in my head too. I was like, I see what you're saying. She was so like, it's a big crystal ball with like crystals as legs. And I remember quartz crystals as like.
Yeah, I remember in Whitley Strieber's communion, like, one of the people in the house after the night that, some of the abductions took place talked about seeing a being that had not your traditional like alien gray head. It almost had this, I'm paraphrasing from memory, but like a illuminated multicolored fountain for a head. So like some real Salvador Dali bizarre stuff. So there, that makes me wonder if this is some sort of thing that dips into our subconscious or uses some sort of psychic interface to connect with us. I don't know. It is very, very strange. But then you get all these stuff that you're talking about, like correlations where like that's consistent, this is consistent, this seems to happen every time. So I don't know why you get the highly strange moments and then the moments of like it does seem to be following rules, Yeah.
Right.
What was it? John Keel who said belief is the enemy, and it's sort of as soon as you're trapped into a paradigm, maybe that's what you're going to get. Julie, what's your take on this? Exploring all these strange topics. Do you find yourself splintering off into going down different rabbit holes, or have you sort of stuck to one that you like, or,
so I'm always asking all the weirdos for reading recommendations, and I have a huge pile of books that I'm working my way through that's like John Keel, and then it's all about cryptids. There's like Linda Godfrey in there. So I've read so much about it, but then I am talking to these people that I really think are very credible and knowledgeable, who are all saying like, I think it's actually all the same thing. Like, even though we're experiencing extremely different phenomena, I think if you are like more open-minded to one, you're going to think that you're seeing that thing. Like, I think I like I don't know if I believe in anything, but I think I probably believe in ghosts more than cryptids or aliens. So like, I think that's the kind of experience that my brain is attuned to. And that's what I'm looking for. Like, I don't think I've ever seen anything that even remotely resembles a spaceship, or I certainly did not see Sonoma Sasquatch yet. though I would like to.
Mm-hmm.
Sonoma
Just like-
Sasquatch. I love that. Yeah,
We're
that's-
giving it a name.
That's
Here
the
we
name
go.
of my next book. Yeah, that's good. My only book. I don't have any books, but
Yeah.
that's
It's a good
that
start.
would be what I
Great
call
place
it.
to start.
Just
Yeah.
just wine tasting with Bigfoot in
Yeah.
both
Oh, yeah.
Liberty and in Sonoma.
Sounds like
Well,
I think it's great.
Amy, Julie, unfortunately, we are coming to the close of this episode. I feel like we're just getting to the truth of all
Oh,
this stuff,
man.
and we have to wrap it up. I did want to just say, side note, when you're back in Liberty, there are stories of gnomes in Liberty as well, of houses that have had gnomes haunting the barns. So maybe something I can help you look into. I'll see if I can find some of
Okay.
those stories. I think it was around Wyandotte County, around that area. But anyway, where can people find your work? Where can people follow you? Should you want to be followed? Not like in the Hitchhiking Ghost style, but just, on social media. And then is there anything else coming up new? Maybe is there anything we can look forward to?
Ooh, lots. I mean, you can just follow me. I'm at Amy Bruni on almost all social media. My podcast, Haunted Road, is coming back out the beginning of April.
Go
and
give that
Julie
a
and I
follow
are
right
working-
now.
Yeah. I work with Aaron Menke from Lord. It's under his umbrella, so it's been really fun. But
Very cool.
and then Julie and I have another top secret book project coming out that I
Nice.
think is probably completely unexpected, and no one's going to
Cool.
even predict what this could possibly be.
Can't
Awesome.
wait. Yeah.
That's
Oh.
exciting.
So we got some time on it, but just know it's coming down the pipe. So
Well, you have to
probably
come
over a
back
year
and
away, but
talk to us about it once it's out.
Exactly.
oh yeah.
Julie, what about you?
Find me at Julie Tremaine on all the socials, and my most recent book that has just come out, because besides writing about ghosts, I also write a lot about food. My most recent book is actually a cookbook. It's the official Seinfeld cookbook, which came out in November, and you can find that.
Yes. I
any
just did a whole
book size.
rewatch. Our audience knows this.
It's so good.
It's best. Awesome. Great. Well, you know what? I think we have Life with the Afterlife up in if you go to our socials in our link tree, we have like an Amazon marketplace window where people can find the books. So click on the link. We have that up there. I will put that Seinfeld cookbook up there. Don't you
Do
it.
Thank
doubt
you.
it. So anybody who writes a book on the show will get their books out there to our audience for sure. Thank you so much for being here. You have to come back when the next project is out. This has been a blast.
So fun. Thank
Thank
you so
you.
much.
All right, Club Scouts, don't forget to click that follow button on Spotify, Apple, or your favorite podcast app so you never miss a single episode of Bigfoot Collectors Club. We want that's a nice little tease for you, if you know what I mean. Something's coming up pretty soon.
That's like Applesauce's best friend, McGumphrey.
Hey.
Both of them not welcome on this show.
Permanent ban.
How dare you? McGuffrey's my old hound dog. That's right. We do
Oh,
want to
boy.
hear from you guys. If you love applesauce, please let us know. Give us a rate and review us on your favorite podcast app. If you drop us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts, we might Applesauce Podcasts. We
Nope.
might read it on the show like this one.
Mizook hashtag love. Yeah,
I
something
think
like that.
love.
Right?
Yeah.
Pretty dope. Not gonna lie. This is a really fascinating podcast and a good way to start the morning and end the day. The boys slay. Smiley face.
I hope
5 stars.
I hope you're listening to it
yeah.
all day long. Start in the morning, end in the day. That's some bitching.
That's a good
love
day
it.
right there.
Wake up, go to sleep with the BCC boys. If you want more Bigfoot Collectors Club, check out our Patreon, BCC The Other Side, for 3 bonus episodes every month exclusive to the Patreon. Head over to patreon.com/Bigfoot Collectors Club for that. And be sure to follow us on Instagram. If you're not, it's sort of the it's not the heart of the show, but it's like the eyes of the show, I guess.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Paranormal comes
Yeah.
with pictures, and that's a
Yeah.
good place to get them.
Yeah, it's you got to find a place to show some of this stuff if it's an audio medium. So follow us on Instagram. It is an extension of the show. We're at Bigfoot Collectors Club over there, and on TikTok at BCC Pod. I keep saying I'm making videos, but we'll see if I actually am by the time.
You're doing good. No, you're doing
fine.
great. Yeah.
Fine, I got some
Keep it
catching
going.
up to do. It was a busy couple of weeks. All right, everybody. All right, write into us at BigfootCollectorsClub@gmail.com. to share your personal paranormal stories. Include the phrase L-Files in the subject line. It might just be read in a future episode. You can follow me at McMills and check out my recent episode of Psyche Magic podcast, where host Jordan Hale, past guest, and I unpacked the dream episodes of The Sopranos. That was really
Killer.
really fun. And of course, don't forget to grab tickets for our live stream this weekend, Saturday, March 11th at 9 p.m. Eastern on popsylounge.com. Bryce, what do you got?
Do that. We want to see you at our live show on Pop C Lounge. You can find me on the socials. I'm on Instagram at Mr. Bryce Johnson and on Twitter at Bryce O. Johnson. And check out our Patreon. It really is us doing a whole other thing over there. So we want you to join us over there.
We've had a bunch of new people coming over there and checking us out. I just want to say thank you. You will get your shout outs in due time, but we're having a blast over there.
And books, and we talk about all kinds of stuff. And you get lots more Riley. I mean, come on. Come on.
I mean, speaking of which, I want to thank everyone that's joined the Cosmeteer recently. It's been a huge influx, and it's like a whole thing happening over there, and I really appreciate you guys.
I'm enjoying doing like groovy Instagram posts for those as well.
It's a whole new outlet for your graphic design skills, Michael. It's excellent. But yeah, I'm Peace Drone on Instagram, and check out the Cosmeteer as we're calling it now. And again,
it's a cosmic tier.
It's a cosmic tier. So it is like the Cosmeteer, and you are Cosmeteers, which are spelled slightly differently, but it all makes sense in our heads, so don't worry about that. But yeah, I just want to reiterate, come to the live show on March 11th, Saturday. I'm going to play some music. We're going to have guests. It's going to be amazing.
You don't have to come anywhere. You can just sit at your computer and watch.
Yeah, by come I mean like digitally through the series of tubes is how you're going to travel.
Send your consciousness our way. All right, we want to thank Amy and Julie one last time for joining us. If we don't see you on the other side or at the show, and we'll be very sad if we don't, we'll see you back here next week. Until then, good night.
And go get regressed.
Bye-bye. See you on Saturday night.
See you there. Bigfoot Collectors Club is produced by Riley Bray and Michael McMillan and scored and engineered by Riley Bray. Our theme song, Come Alone, is by Suneaters, courtesy of Lotuspool Records. Do us a favor and support the show and unlock 3 bonus episodes every month by becoming a member of our Patreon, BCC The Other Side, which can be found at patreon.com/BigfootCollectorsClub.